without further ado, we got Devon Yelder in the house. What's up, What's up, Devon? How you been, man?
Man, so good. So busy.
Yeah, for sure, man. I've seen you, man. It's crazy. Like when we first started talking and we met and everything like that, we were pretty much in the same space where we were just starting to make comics. We started doing our own little thing here and there. And then now, we've expanded tenfold, right? In two different directions. And it's crazy to see how, where we went just from doing books together with the group and then moving on to our own stuff, our own projects. And then now you're really ingrained in your community, right? I was watching the PBS documentary you did with your local PBS station. And I was like, man, Devon really is doing a lot of stuff. And I see you're doing shows all the time. You're doing teaching, which we'll get into later, and a bunch of stuff. So how did you kind of figure out, I don't want to talk to you about just how you started getting into comics, because we kind of, they talked about in the PBS documentary, but I want to figure out what was your mindset from going to, okay, I'm publishing these books, to now I want to start giving back and I want to start teaching people and, doing all these more quote unquote unorthodox ways in your career. How did you land on those that path?
Yeah, so it definitely helped that I talked with the director from the Vine Neighborhood Association, which is my neighborhood. It's a neighborhood I claim. I live out in Portage now, but my real formative years, I found a real special place in the Vine neighborhood of Kalamazoo. And when I first moved there, I was just getting out of a career as a professional musician, or at least I was at the tail end of it. And I had just started drawing. And this was right after 2020, and I finally found this space where I felt like this is a community that accepts me, that I'm really happy to be a part of. So I went to the Vine Neighborhood Association and talked with the director, Steve Walsh, and asked him, how can I get involved? And he gave me some advice that has stuck with me. And he said, the best way that you can get involved with your community is to share what you're passionate about. Yeah. And so at that time, I thought it was music, but music was really, that chapter of my life was starting to end. And I was really starting to get to where I've always wanted to be, which is a comic book artist and an illustrator. And so 3 years later, I come back and I'm doing an event with Satellite Records, which is right next door. And I see Steve again, and we set up a meeting, and I drop this huge bag full of comic books that we've worked on in the last 2 years. And this is what I've been doing, and this is how I've been engaging with my community. And my community was online at the time. And once he saw that, and then he saw me again, and I had the bell, and I was doing that event at Satellite Records. That's what brought me into the Vine Neighborhood Association, and has really connected me even further with my community. But yeah, it really started with that line from Steve. If you want to get involved in the community, share what you're passionate about, because it's authentic and it's real. It's not you just trying to capture a moment or try and take advantage of people, even if it's unintentionally. When you're sincerely expressing yourself, people can feel that and they want to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think when it comes to comics and what people's paths, usually they kind of want to go down, I want to get published by, this publication. I want to go to Marvel. I want to go to DC. I want to work on Batman, Spider-Man. I want to get this great indie comic produced through, Image or whatever the case is. And even for myself, right, I've learned there's multiple different paths, doing research, studying, watching a bunch of interviews from a bunch of different creators. And there's not one path to being a professional, right? People say yeah, you could being a pro is working at these big companies, but that's not necessarily true, right? Technically, being a professional is you're getting paid for what you're doing, right? Anytime you're getting paid to do something, you're technically a professional. But even on top of that, is just for example, I was listening to an interview with Kyle Baker, and he was talking about, you, as a comic book creator, you kind of have to find your niche, right? Trying to be a superhero creator is going to be really hard because everybody wants to do that as the most flooded market out there. And he was like, I do historical comics, right? He was like, I wanted to get the book in the library. I want my books to be in libraries, school libraries and stuff like that, because that's how I'm going to get my name out there. And that's how I'm going to get my books always being picked up, because they're at a school library, public library. He does he did like David and Goliath comic, the story of Nat Turner, and so on and so forth. He's done a bunch of them. He's like, that's the market that I want to corner. And I took that to heart. I was like, man, that's something that I kind of want to do too. Like, I want to find a specific niche and then gear myself towards that, right? And even with doing this YouTube stuff, right, that was kind of a concerted effort on my part to go down that path, right? Like, some people just might see me as a YouTuber, some of my people will see me as just a cartoonist, and then some people will see the cross section amongst that, right? And when I see what you did and what your path is pretty similar to like mine, where you're going like, again, unorthodox path of, I'm gonna get involved in my community, I'm gonna share my comics and not try to upsell everybody and try to, you know, show it as this grandiose, great thing, the next big thing. I'm not gonna keep submitting to publishers and all that stuff. Like, I'm gonna just keep making my books on my own, keep funding them, and then I'm gonna continue to inquire with the people around me and see if they're interested in, and show that I actually care about this. This isn't a grift. This isn't a money grab. This is something that I really care about. And I've just seen you do that, you know, tenfold. Like, again, like, even like get into how you are starting to get into teaching and like showing people, you know, cartooning, what it really feels like and looks like. How did you get into that experience, and how has that been for you so far?
Well, Brian Christopher Moss, big shout out to him, because he's definitely a big reason to like what he helped. He was the next important step into me understanding what that meant to get out to the community. So it was like the first time I really understood that advice was when I heard it from Steve. And then I listened to, it was like the official first episode of Power to the Panel podcast. And it's like from there on through that whole podcast, Brian continuously preaches about how important it is. The reality of building a sustainable career is within your community. It's not, Marvel doesn't care about you. DC doesn't care about you. Like, they're going to try and pay you as little. They're a business. And so they're going to operate as a business, but a community supports one another. That was sort of the direction that really encouraged me to look towards my community, to see it's also so much more, you know, rewarding. And same with teaching. So I've always assumed that was going to be a part of the path, that it seems like to really make it as an artist. You know, teaching is going to be a part of it, but I love to teach. I've been a yoga instructor for about 4 or 5 years, I think, at this point. It'll be 5 years, I think, in November. When I did boxing for a long time, that was a really big sense of enjoyment that I got from boxing, was just light sparring with people. And when I'd see the new people that were coming in, how I could help them, you know, and make this a safe, exciting space for them. So I always knew teaching was going to be, you know, on the path at some point. But Brian really, you know, encouraged that you really ought to think about teaching as, because you're also building your community there too. You're going to build that network that also supports you when you need it. Just like with Power to the Panel, and how Brian brought all of us together. He taught us, and then we were able to learn how to stand on our own feet, do the work that we need to, and then share that message to other people. Other people eventually help us do something similar.
Yeah, for sure. Like the pay it forward method, you know, all those things, right? Because at the end of the day, art isn't something that's a necessity, right? Art makes life great, but it doesn't make you live. You know what I'm saying? You need art to live, but you don't need to live off. You can't live off art. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that you kind of have to get people to care about, and the best way to do that is have them care about you, and also give that in return, right? Give the care to other people. And I think teaching is really important, and it also, it's not just important for you, but it's also important for the culture of comic book creating and cartooning. When you teach people, you bring more people into the fold, and so on and so forth, especially in a positive way, not in a hyper capitalistic way, like a Spider-Man, Batman, come read all of our books, and then we're going to keep recycling these stories over and over and over just to keep you from buying and buying and buying. And when, like, you look at more, like, for me, I've really started to lean into and gear towards like memoir type books, slice of life comics and stuff like that, because I feel like they're more interpersonal and stuff, and stories that I really, really enjoy to read, and that's something that I in the future kind of want to get towards, and start putting those type of messages out there, because I feel telling a real story is more important than telling a fantastical one, right? You can tell a fantastical story and give a good message and stuff like that, but when you give people your real self in a real raw way,
Yeah.
they will really appreciate that. And that's the same whenever you give into your community and they show you, like you said, you show them how passionate you are about it, and it comes back in tenfold. And even building a community online, like that was a big part of my creative journey as well, like being part of the group and learning from everybody. I learned so much just about designing, formatting, all these things I was really like intimidated about and didn't really know, about until I got into the group. And it was really a big pivotal step in me progressing forward, right? Like doing these Kickstarters and continuing to make comics and stuff like that. And I felt like honestly, it really fast forwarded me even further. Like it got me from A to like Z quicker than I thought I could have been, right? I'm not where I want to be exactly, but it definitely helps, right? And then now I kind of want to do the same thing what you're doing. Hopefully in the near future, once my kids get a little bit older and they're in school, I can start volunteering at like my comic book shop or start doing art schools and courses and stuff like that. Like I've been trying to map these things out in my head, and that's something that I kind of want to get into too, because I feel like it is important just to give information out there. Like I don't want to gatekeep information, because what's the point of that? Like what's the like this isn't a $1 billion business. Like nobody, like the top selling comic book artists and creators, most of them end up getting a second job after one. Like Brian Michael Bendis was working at a university. Scott Snyder, I feel like, was working at a university. He also has like a Substack, and also like people have these multiple sources of income that help them, right? And that's what you're essentially doing, right? You're leveraging your comics and stuff to make out a real career for yourself, right? And so where are you looking for, like, actually, so what has made you kind of get in the mindset, okay, I'm going to start going to, art shows and art galleries and not really do conventions? Like you've done conventions, a few of them, you can talk about their experience between like conventions and then doing these art house shows, these parties and, all these things. What are the contrasts between those two? And then how have you kind of figured out how to navigate between those two types of spaces?
Yeah. Well, actually with Comic-Cons, the only Comic-Con I've done has been at Pisco Comic-Con.
Really?
Yeah, just
wow.
the two. Yep. Yeah, those are the only two I've done. Basically since it's like April and May, I've had a show, some pop-up event that I've done just about every weekend since April or May of last year. And that kind of, that took a little bit to get that going. My first Comic-Con was the first at Pisco Comic-Con. And from there, I did like another one at a local comic book shop. Again, recommendation from Brian of the Power to the Panel podcast. And then I did one with like my yoga studio. And somewhere along the way, I was encouraged to check out a Lucha Libre event that was happening in my area, because for those that don't know, I make Lucha Libre comics. I got one of them right here, La Escuela de Lucha. And so I was encouraged to check out these Lucha Libre events. There was one near me called Lucha Boom, and I actually got a contact with them through somebody that knew Bobby Piscor, Ed's brother. And after that, like someone online reached out to me that has been keeping up with Power to the Panel and K-Fam and Cartoonist Kayfabe. And he was like, hey, I love what you're doing. I'm trying to do something similar. I've connected people through comics or through art, building community through art. And so we have this organization called New Wave, where it's a group of people. And it's like a sort of a multifaceted festival where it's a rave, but there's also live art demonstrations, and there are other like different types of vendors and such like that. And he saw that I was doing live drawing at the tabling events that I had done before. At each of them, I set up an easel, and then I push the table back, so I never sit at my table and behind my books trying to hide from everybody. I draw at my table, but I never draw like this.
Oh man!
I always push the table back, and I always set the easel up, and I turn it away so the audience can see it, and the audience it's inviting people in to my space. That's like episode 2, I think, of Power to the Panel. I happened to hear that at the same time as I heard, I think it's like Attack Peter.
I remember watching that. Inkpulp. Yeah.
Yeah, on Equal. Yeah, that was really influential to me. And he said the same thing, but move the table out of the way. Try and think how you can invite people into your space, share a part of who you are. Because as Brian said in those early episodes, people do not want to buy your comic.
Yeah.
They want to buy connectivity. They want to buy connection. They want to connect. They want to have a human moment. And so I looked at my tabling that way, pushing the table out of the way, getting on the other side of it, doing the live drawings, doing live paintings, setting up music. I'll bring my speaker if music isn't available. I'll have that playing. I'll have like plants and stuff on my table. Setting up an environment makes me feel comfortable. If there was nobody tabling, or if there was nobody attending, and it was just me, I'd be fine.
Yeah,
I'd be doing that if nobody was around anyways.
for sure.
And so, somebody saw me doing that, appreciated where I was coming from, and saw what I was doing, invited me out to one of these New Wave festivals. At that time, I happened to have a pretty open schedule. I had an injury that kept me out of work, but I was able to do the tabling, and so my schedule was open. So when I did that event, someone asked if I would do another event, and then that led to another event, and that led to another one and another one. Soon I was doing raves, these raves like all summer long. And then the record store, Satellite Records, as soon as we started dropping comics, I took some of my comics to the record store, because comics and records, that's a given. I mean, that's where comics should be. We should be at the record shop and should be at other shops beyond the comic book shop.
For sure.
And because I did that, because I like made that connection with my record store, they had an opportunity that came up. They do this thing called Vintage in the Zoo. It's a vintage market that happens in Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's all vintage things, records, and other such. And so they always have extra table space. So they asked if I wanted to join them for one of them. Well, that one led into the rest of the summer and fall.
Nice.
So it very quickly happened like that, where because again, as Brian said, this stuff compounds. Like if you make yourself available to it, one thing, your comic is your business card. It shows you what you can do. It's not the end product. It's literally just the start of the conversation, because those conversations are what build your career paths.
For sure. Yep, that was like exactly. I've only done a few shows. Now, when you were saying that, I was like, man, I think I've only done like 3 or 4 shows. Also, last year I made a concerted effort to like start going to shows, because I started compiling a bunch of books that I was like, okay, well now I could start going to shows and see how it's gonna work for me, right? I had watched a lot of those. I mean, I obviously was watching Power of the Panel and those Ink Pulp episodes, so I was like conscious about how I set up my table, make sure I wasn't sitting there just drawing all day and stuff. But what I do is I just stand up. That's because one of those chairs at the convention suck. So like I can't sit down for a long time. It started hurting my back and my ass. So I usually would just stand up. And then every time somebody walks by, I'm like, hey, how you doing? Da, 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 da. I have like freebies. I would give away like ash cans all the time. Like I'll print out a bunch of ash cans of like one of my comments or whatever I'm going to work on in the near future. Or I have like my art book I have on my website. That's the Ink Slapper. I would just print one of those out, and then I would just hand them out to whoever. And even if they just take that and walk away, has like my QR code, to all my stuff on there. And I was always good at that. Like that, like it was just kind of natural for me to start and then like to talk to people and just kind of stand up, and I'm kind of big, so it's like easy for me to stand out. If I stand up, people will see me. So, I always was pretty good at shows. All the shows I've done well. I've either made my money back or some profit. I've never done too bad at any of the shows. I've only done 4 shows. And they've all done pretty well. And even that, like the connectivity, right? Like, I've sold comics just by talking to people and just having a conversation about characters or books or just like whatever. Like the last show I did, I was talking to somebody about Ninja Turtles, and I was like, oh wait, well I have a Ninja Turtle book here, and it was one of our old Ninja Turtle books. It was like the last copy I had. I didn't buy that many copies. I was like, so I was like, fuck it. And I sold a drawing with it as well. And then, because his homie, the guy who bought it, his homie was a big Ninja Turtle fan. And I was like, well, he probably doesn't have this because this is like, a bootleg. So, so he's like, yeah, he probably like it. So, things like that where sometimes I'll go to shows and I'll see people who just kind of sit there. They don't really talk. They don't interact. And you see nobody's really going to their table and stuff like that, and just kind of like, well, what's the point of you spending your money to go and then you're not gonna try to sell yourself or sell your stuff, right? And then it always comes back to the human connection. The
Yes.
comic is just a thing, right? It's not really that important, but if you sell yourself into this book and they like you, or what you got going on, they're more likely to pick it up, or at least give it a second glance, and that's good enough for me at the very least, right?
Yeah.
So it is very much a learning process, and I think having that intuitiveness to continue to like figure out what worked and what didn't work as you progress, I feel as though like that's the best thing. And then even in your cases, right, you're making real conversations and connections with people who are going to lead you to a next step and the next step into something different, and down this path and down this path. And let's go back to the lucha thing, right? So one, let's talk about your lucha comics. That was like one of the first things you were showing off when I first met you. The little the luchador guy, and sorry, I forgot his name, but and like that whole path. So like one, I think I've asked you this a long time ago, but one, how did you get into like the luchador the culture, and like what made you really like gravitate towards that? And then two, how was that now, like moving forward? What have you gotten out of that, with that connection between the wrestling guys and all that stuff? How did the comic come about, and then where has it gone from there?
Yeah, so I have been a wrestling fan for most of my life. Or I took like a break as like a teenager and my young early 20s. But yeah, as a kid, I was obsessed with wrestling. And one of my favorite wrestlers was Rey Mysterio. I happened to get on SmackDown. Was the only channel I could watch because I didn't have, or was the only show I could watch because I didn't have cable.
Right.
And it happened to be at that TBS very time. Yeah, I think it was UPN.
Something like that. I think it was different everywhere, but yeah, I remember it was on two different networks.
Yep. And
Raw,
so
SmackDown, yeah.
Yeah, and so it happened to be at that time right when Rey Mysterio was coming out, and so he was huge. And so I was afraid. I was a fan of more American style wrestling, but I was familiar with Lucha Libre through Rey Mysterio, right? That style, that purely Mexican culture. And then in like early 2021 maybe, I found a thing called Lucha Underground, and I loved the shit out of that. Lucha Underground's awesome. It's like a totally different like style of filming wrestling. It's way more of a movie. I want to say, what was his name? The director, Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez?
Yeah, so I want to say that he helped in like that first season, he helped them like film the wrestling and the like behind the scenes stuff, because the behind the scenes stuff wasn't like a live camera that was going back and seeing what was happening behind the scenes. It was like a movie. It'd be these movies that would happen in between, and it was scripted, and it was totally different, and it's like everything I could want out of a pro wrestling thing. So I was really into that. I was really inspired by that, and then I met Alfred and Mike and Gabby and Ruben from Defective Comics. We made Defective Comics together, and I already kind of started to have this idea for a character that was like, if there was a Captain America that existed in America now in 2023, I think when I was coming up with it, he'd be Mexican and he'd be a luchador. Like that way more represents this country than Steve Rogers maybe now.
Mm-hmm.
So, or Steve Rogers type. So that was kind of the inspiration of it, and I just kept following that path. I'm by all means not like the foremost educated person on Lucha Libre, Lucha culture. In fact, like even though, so I started making this character San Pedro. I started making him and his stories in Defective Comics, and it was sort of my way actually to try and deal with the frustration and anger that I had with this country and how they treated people of color, really. So those are the first couple stories.
Yeah, I remember reading that. Yep. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Brought it into Defective Comics issue 2, which I did the cover for. And some more one page. There's another one page story. I did mostly one pages in that first issue. I'll bring it up again. And then did that San Pedro Eagle Pass story And so it started here, but then Jason with Saturday Morning Mashup from Handplant Press, he started coming up with that magazine idea, Saturday Morning Mashup, and he asked if I would be willing to create a luchador like story. I'm gonna bring it up again, in like a cartoony style to like fit with like an original story with that character San Pedro, and doing like a cartoony style that would fit with the magazine. And so I started looking towards, well, what did I watch as a kid on Saturday mornings? Everybody else in this group they're a little older than me, so they're pulling from stuff from the 80s and 90s, but I grew up in the early 2000s. And one of the shows I watched a lot as a kid was Mucha Lucha.
Hell yeah, I used to watch this too, yeah.
Yes, that show's so good too. And like Brian gave me a VHS tape of it. I've been watching like the first episodes. I just found it in his basement. He's like, you can have it.
That's fire. That's fire.
So I was looking to Mucha Lucha for inspiration, because that's what I knew. And I was like, and I was listening to these podcasts, Lucha Libre, trying to understand the history of it. I was always writing the San Pedro comics. And, they say that like, if you're going to write something, write what you know. And I decided, well, I'm really trying to put effort into learning. Why don't I share what I'm learning with other people? Because there's so many other people in Michigan alone that don't know what Lucha Libre is. And so for sure, that's where La Escuela de Lucha, the school of Lucha Libre, that's where that idea came from. So, and this is where, San Pedro ended up. So going from like a Batman, Spawn, vigilante sort of thing to now like this educational space and this Saturday morning style cartoon.
That's dope, man.
Yep. Yeah, and I just really wanted to, at the end of the day, I'm just putting some light on this. Really, I mean, if you like superhero comics, we have real life superheroes. They're called luchadors, and they're in Mexico, and it's a very purely Mexican tradition. So it's another benefit that it happens to shine light on this awesome culture.
For sure, man. That's dope. One, good on you for actually doing like research and actually like doing a real good deep dive on it, and then in turn giving that out to everybody else. I feel like that's actually smart and really good for people really to understand the culture and really what you're passionate about as well. It is interesting because I never really got into wrestling. My little brother liked wrestling a little bit when I was little. I watched it a little bit when he would watch it in passing, but that was never really my steez at all. But I know like somebody else who talks about, like Danny Warren Johnson will talk about wrestling, but he likes the Japanese, like AEW, I think is the league out there, whatever they got going on out there. He likes a lot of that stuff. But it is interesting, like how the differences between like wrestling in America compared to the other wrestling factions around the world, where the other ones, they really big on the great costumes and the mask and all the cool looking stuff, where in America it's more like physique and like being big and crazy looking. I mean, they're all big and buff, but like it's more handsome face guys, ugly face guys, and crazy. And I mean, wrestling in itself is a really interesting culture. And I can see how people are really into it, into the storylines and into the characters, because it is essentially, like you said, it is all superhero stuff. It's all fantastical, really crazy, acrobatic, Marvel style cinematics, soap operas and stuff like that. And people really get into it. As where, for me, what I feel like passionate about that is with basketball. Like I'm a real big NBA fan. I really love watching NBA. Like I'm a diehard Spurs fan because I'm from San Antonio, and so we're finally good after like 3-4 seasons, thank God. But so I'm in the same thing. Even when I was in middle school and I was actually really playing basketball like competitively, I was really drawn into it. I watch basketball all day, NBA TV, NCAA, like college basketball, high school teams, like when I was in high school, all that stuff. So it's interesting to see how people continue, like, as you get older, you end up reverting back to a lot of things you loved as a kid, which is kind of like a really like special thing. Like you never really outgrow things. You kind of end up reversing back into those things. I had a conversation with my friend a long time ago about that.
If you pay attention.
If you pay attention and and if you get into that good space, mind space and mind head of like being able to get into like I took a long gap from making comics and now I'm back into making comics. I took a long break into watching and being into basketball and now I'm back into basketball. And I work out, lift, but all these things that I used to do a lot as a little kid, I took a break from it. Now I'm getting back into it once I kind of slowed down in my life and settle down in certain things that are pretty much taken care of. And now I'm able to focus on things that I really love and passionate about and use them as like a back to like a kid, like an escape, stress reliever, and things like that. But man, yeah, that lucha comic is cool. I'm glad to see this like evolving into something bigger, and now you're getting in like into the community of of the wrestlers in your local area. I don't know if you could talk about that right now, or what the deal is with that. If that's hush hush.
No, no. I'll say what I think I can. I mean,
Yeah.
so initially, right, you're right. The comic was a bridge into the wrestling world, and so that got me connected with Lucha Boom, which is a lucha libre organization that happens around the Detroit area, so on the East Coast of Michigan, whereas I'm on the West Coast. But now I've had I've done so many shows with them. Basically, anytime that they do a show, which they do at least twice a year, I just asked if I can still show up and sell comics, and there's always room for me. So they always encourage me to come through. That's also opened the door to the other wrestling, just wrestling in general, spaces that we have here. Excuse me. So the other wrestling shows that happen in Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids. And so, yeah, Lucha Boom. And, cool thing about this, you can see the guy with the green mask. That's yeah, dude, that's Mil Muertes. That was like the first guy that got me into Lucha Underground in the first place. He was like their big bad. This show was so cool, dude. This was the Dia de los Muertes show that they just did back in November. Yeah, I had Dolph Ziggler there. He was amazing. It was such a good time.
Oh yeah, that's dope, man. And yeah, now you're in community with them from making your comic, right? Like that's awesome,
exactly. And so those are some consistent shows, right? And then what you were alluding to, so there's a wrestling organization that I happened to see on Instagram, and I reached out to them because they were doing like a reading program with their wrestling. I was like, hey, what you guys are doing is really cool. I'd be interested in an interview. This is what I do. And then they saw what I do, and they're like, this is amazing and great timing, because we actually happened to sorry, there's my girlfriend Claire.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We happened to I showed them my stuff, and they're like, oh, this is perfect timing because we are really interested in getting into comics ourselves. We'd love for you to we'd love to work with you and make comic books together.
Yeah.
And so now we're in negotiations with a full contract. And this contract, this is, so now we're stepping up, and this is what, Brian was saying about the comic as a business card, right? Because the final product is not the comic. The comic helps lead to the contract. Not only, and then the comic also led into me teaching. Like I got my teaching jobs from the shows that I was doing. Like I was doing so many shows. One of the teachers from the school, who I happen to be friends with, saw that, asked if I would come to a couple of her shows. She saw that I could back up what I was talking about, and then asked me to sub for her. And I did that a couple times, and now I have my own program.
That's it.
Yeah, dude, 8-week program. We're just looking at your comics today, showing them how illustrators design backgrounds that fit with their stories. We're looking at your Spider-Man comic, which was called what again?
Nobody's Safe.
Nobody's Safe. And then Tit for Tat, is that right? The horror comic, and then the basketball comic.
Scrub, yeah.
Yes, and just showing like how you illustrated environments that fit narratively with each different story. So.
Oh, nice. That's sick, man. That's actually really cool.
Cool? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, hell yeah, that's dope. Yeah, because if you think about it, right, making a comic, that is a big task, right? Doing just 24-page comic, design it after doing the writing, art, and designing, especially if you're doing all yourself, is a big task. And being able to show that you were able to finish that, especially on your own as a writer and artist, that is like a feat in its own, right? And that will prove to people, well, I've been able to do something and accomplish something. And then if they like it and they can see you're doing it consistently at that, that can open a lot of doors and a lot of paths. That's how a lot of people get put on, like I've heard talk, or some of this a couple of streams ago, or, you can just show people that you're able to accomplish something, and it will open their eyes, right? You might not be the best artist or the best writer or whatever, but if you're the most productive and consistent and on time and professional at that, that will go a lot longer than somebody who's like the best, finest artist or writer who may not be able to get their stuff done on time, may be like an ass about everything, or you always have excuses. You know, people love consistency. They love professionalism, and then also just being a nice person in general. That was like one of the tips I got from a cartoonist in Heroes Con. He was just like, if you're just a good person, you're just nice, a lot of things are gonna open up for you. And I was like, well, that's just life lessons, right? That just makes sense. So like,
lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. And then so now, I mean, so when we go back, you did something else, like a big project that was super duper dope. That that was a behemoth of a book, right?
Hey,
right
yeah.
Here. Jobber. So kind of talk about how, talking about completing a project, right? This is a big feat in its own. You have multiple artists in here. This is a really big book. How did that come about, and how did you kind of manage, working and getting this project done, right? It's something that, like, again, this isn't a small book. It's not 24 pages, like what, 100 something, maybe 200 pages.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of get into this, like to working on this? And somebody got a little hint up in there also. You know what I'm saying? So, but how was that, that process and getting that done?
Well, definitely got to thank Jeremy for leading, Jeremy Heiler, for leading the charge with those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books. I saw, we made the 3 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books. Those was our first projects that we worked on, getting together with Power to the Panel. And we were just wrapping up that 3rd one, and I knew it was the end of it. And I just happened to see Matt Stefani's book, Batteries in My Back, a tribute to cartoonist Kayfabe.
Yeah, I think I got that one too.
Yeah, I was looking around for it too, because I know I at least had the sticker on my desk, but yeah, and it was clear. It was, yes, dude.
Yeah, he sent me this. I was like, man, this is fire, man.
It's
such
so
a good book.
Good.
Great design work on him.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
So anyway, Oddjobbers does not get made without Matt Stefani. So I clocked him immediately. He's like, oh, this guy loves Mike Mignola, because Mike Mignola is my favorite, probably my favorite artist. He's definitely top 3 for sure. And so I reached out to Matt and I was like, hey, it's time. We just did 3 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books. Clearly, you got the eye for this. You got the know-how as a graphic designer, assembling books, which is a big part, because I don't know that stuff. And I think that's important to highlight that project happened not because I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I did all this myself. That project happened because I asked other people for help. Yeah, I looked for other people that could do the things that I couldn't do. So I immediately contacted Matt, and then I got a hold of Brian, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up I think he actually suggested that I set up an editorial team. So I built a body of editors or people that could help guide me through this process, that can help me, because I knew I wanted to do a big book. I knew I wanted to do short stories, and I wanted several artists to be part of it. I think we actually had a smaller number in mind, and then Brian did a live stream, was like, yeah, if anybody wants to sign up, here you go.
They just hyped it up.
And then we got like almost 50 artists that signed up. That eventually dwindled down to about 40. But yeah, so we had a 6-person editorial team that was managing 40 artists, and we started the book in October, and the goal was to have all the pages in by January. So that means that we actually got all the pages in by February. And yeah, by March, Matt had everything assembled, and it got all of the checks and balances that it needed. And that's why you have a 164 page book featuring 40 plus artists, all telling their own Hellboy stories, 1 to 6 page Hellboy stories, or a couple pinups. I even got my grandmother in on this.
That's dope, man.
Yeah, dude, that's a shining moment for me. My grandmother, my grandmother was a frequent storyteller, is quite the storyteller. And as a kid, she would tell stories that would like scare the shit out of me around the campfire. And she'd just make them up off the top of her head, which is wild.
Wow.
She had one that haunted me for 30 years. And so when I was thinking how I was going to write the story for my Hellboy comic, I was like, well, you think you could like revisit that story and then maybe we could use that for Hellboy? And so we like worked on it together, and she wrote this story here, A Clockwork Horror by Darlene Elliott. That's my grandmother. And that was based off the story that she told me as a kid. And then I just followed that up with my Hellboy story. It takes place after the fact.
That's fire.
So at 70, she was finally published.
Dang, that's sick. That's actually cool. I didn't even know that. That's crazy. That's actually really, really dope, man. That's actually fire. Last thing before, because I know we're gonna start slapping some ink here soon.
Yeah.
That PBS interview, how did that come about? That was like, I was rewatching this, like, man, this is so sick, man. It was like super high quality, great interview. They had you into drawing and all that stuff. I would have been nervous. I was like, bro, I don't know if I can even draw in front of you guys.
I was.
Yeah, I would be like, bro, it's interesting. Like the first half is like the black artists in the community and stuff like that, and then they move into your story. So yeah, how did that come about? How did that opportunity present itself, and like how did you feel the news and all that stuff? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was already trying to do something with PBS anyways, because I knew like a month and a half or something like that, they had released the news that that PBS and this and CBS, I believe, Central Broadcasting Systems, had lost government funding. That CBS was going to shut down, but PBS just, it lost a big chunk of their support and financial funding. So I was like, we got to do something for PBS. Mm-hmm. So I was already in that mind space, and I was trying to figure it out. And honestly, dude, I was. It's funny. This is how life works. This is what I mean with like lifestyles and how this comes up, because I had just spent all day at a client's house. One of my part-time jobs is I work with the elderly. And so I was offered this client. It was going to be like 12-hour shifts, but it was going to be a lot of money, and I could really use the money. And I went out and checked. I spent all day doing that instead of like making comics. And I was really having to figure out, like, what am I going to do? Like, should I take this? Because if I do, I might not be able to teach. I might not be able to do this and that. And so that was easy enough way to like convince myself to go to the Bagel Beanery, which is this bagel joint. I can't remember why, but I was just like, let me think on this over a bagel. And so I went to the Bagel Beanery, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I can't do it. Even though I need the money, it's going to get in the way of me teaching. It's going to get in the way of other opportunities. I'm just going to have to tell them no, and I'm just going to have to figure it out. Bro, yeah. I walk outside. Immediately after sending that text, I walk outside, and there's a PBS van in the park. Wow. It's a van decorated with like Arthur and other PBS characters. Like, get out. And so it was raining at the time. The Bagel Beanery was shutting down. And so I needed somewhere to eat, and I needed to get out of the rain. So I had to duck and cover under these like trees and these bushes so I could eat my food. And I just waited for them to go to their van. And once they got to the van, I like hopped out of the bushes.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I was like, wait, no, I'm a cartoonist. I'm harmless. And I gave them my business card. I told them, like, what I'm about, blah blah blah. And they're like, oh, this is great, because we always get painters, we always get sculptors, but we never get comic book artists on the show that they run, which is it's the Grand Rapids station of PBS works with Kalamazoo on this show called Kalamazoo Lively Arts, because we have a very strong art community in Kalamazoo. And so this is a TV show. For those watching, go to PBS app, type in Kalamazoo. You'll see Kalamazoo Lively Arts. Episode 10 is me. But yeah, so they're like, well, that sounds really great. I just ended up following up with them like, a week or two later, just to make sure that they got my contact and all that. And then, yeah, landed the interview. It happened within like a couple weeks after that.
Wow, that's actually super dope, man. Let me see. I'm trying to pull it up real quick. world premiere. No, I'm playing. But yeah, that's crazy. I was like, because I remember you talking about it a little bit on in the chat and whatever. But I mean, you should have hyped that up more. That would have been like,
yeah, for real.
Arco Arts right here supporting the community. Yeah, it is really super dope, and it's really good quality too. I was like, man, they must have the big cameras for you, huh?
Well, so it starts with a blank sheet of paper, and then an idea, and then you bring that idea to life with a pencil. And so there's a couple different stages. There's like a blue line stage where you have this pencil that doesn't get picked up by a scanner. So
Devon's famous.
Sketch an idea out, and you refine it with a graphite pencil, and then you refine it again with ink. And that's what takes it from a blank piece of paper to a published work.
Dang, they got some good shots of your stuff too, man.
The most fun is the idea stage where I'll draw small thumbnail drawings. I'll get the concepts all right there. The penciling stage, so we go from a blank piece of paper to the actual drawing. The only thing I dread, but I think it's really important, is the lettering. So a lot of my stuff, it's all hand lettering. Generally, that's the most time consuming, is doing the lettering. But
what did your family say when they saw this? Did y'all like watch it like together and stuff?
No, I haven't watched it with my family, but
out of the womb with it.
That's all we need to
my family members have watched it. I didn't get to watch it with them, but I watched it with Claire, and she was
hyped.
Yeah, she was so excited. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, my little brother, he runs a shoe convention out of San Antonio, and he was getting a lot of press because he started when he was 15, and so he got invited to like this like business ball for like young entrepreneurs and all this other stuff, and he ended up getting on the news as well, and it was pretty funny too, just seeing him on there. I was like, what the hell? Like, so random as hell. They filmed it at like my aunt's house and stuff. It was so funny. He was just like,
that's cool.
He's been doing it for shit like 10, 15 years, not 15, like 10, 11 years now, you know, like he started 14, 15, he's 25 now, and he's been doing it for a long time. He does really, really good. The shows do pretty good. He's like around like the metro, like San Antonio area. So he was like San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, Houston area. He really did a good job. Like he really expanded like streetwear, shoes, and all this other stuff. And now he has like a printing business. Like he does stickers and like what are the bags for the weed? Like he does like prints like the designs and stuff on there, and he just got a 3D printer, so he's starting to do all that stuff. So it's really cool to see him. Like he's never actually had an actual job. He's been taking care of himself, doing entrepreneurial stuff like flipping clothes and shoes, and in the shoe convention, which does really good. And then now he opened the sticker and printing business. So leaning into that. But yeah, man, that's super dope that you've gotten all these opportunities, especially just out of like happenstance, just kind of being in the right place, right time. And then again, just having a comic book and showing people like, hey, like I do this. I'm not playing around. Like I don't have an idea. I actually have a book. I have multiple books. You have the whole like 10, 15 books pretty much.
Bro,
so it's like
can't
jump crazy.
You can't jump out of the bushes and expect a job offer if you don't have the wherewithal to be able to back it up. Like, so it was it's definitely good timing. It was so fortuitous, but it was also being ready for that moment when it happens. That's what it's all about. It's just like being ready for the moments and to be able to take the opportunities as they present themselves, because as you know, Kova, the path presents itself. You just got to be willing to, take those steps when they do.
What do they say? Luck is preparation meets something. I don't remember what they say, but like, saying just being ready for the moment essentially. And you ready to draw? I got a piece done for this. You can see that.
Oh, okay. So you're inking.
Yeah, I already penciled it out because I wasn't
cool.
It's like a cyberpunk chick, and I'm just gonna ink it out.
Sick.
Yeah.
So